Maya Williams could have revealed her identity on day one. As the founder and CEO of Sterling Marketing Solutions, she could have walked in with power and authority. Instead, she chose to work undercover as a regular employee, and what she discovered about her own company's culture was worse than she ever imagined. When her racist manager finally gave her the excuse she'd been waiting for, everything was about to change. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Sterling Marketing Solutions' downtown headquarters, casting long shadows across the polished marble floors. Maya Williams swiped her employee badge at the security turnstile, just like she had every day for the past 6 months. The security guard, Marcus, gave her his usual warm smile. "Morning, Maya. Ready for another day in paradise?" he joked, not knowing that the woman in the simple blazer and sensible flat standing before him was actually his ultimate boss. Maya smiled back. "Always ready, Marcus. How's your daughter doing with her college applications?" "Getting closer to her dream school thanks to you asking about it," Marcus replied, his gratitude genuine. This was exactly the kind of interaction Maya had hoped to witness during her undercover operation. The authentic relationships that formed when hierarchy was stripped away. Maya had built Sterling Marketing Solutions from nothing 12 years ago, starting in her studio apartment with a laptop and a dream. The company had grown into one of the most successful marketing firms on the West Coast, with annual revenues exceeding $200 million and offices in 6 major cities. But success had brought distance from the day-to-day reality of her employees' experience. 6 months ago, Maya had made a decision that stunned her board of directors. She was going undercover in her own company. Anonymous complaints about discrimination and hostile work environments had been increasing, particularly from employees of color. Traditional HR investigations had turned up nothing concrete, but Maya suspected that was because people were afraid to speak honestly when they knew their words would be reported to management. So Maya Williams, CEO and founder, had temporarily stepped back from her executive role, allowing her trusted COO Jennifer Chen to run daily operations. Maya had applied for an entry-level marketing associate position under the name Maya Washington, complete with a fabricated resume and references provided by a private investigation firm she'd hired to help create her cover identity. The transformation had been remarkable. Instead of her usual designer suits and executive presence, Maya dressed in affordable business casual clothing from department stores. She took public transportation instead of her Tesla, lived in a modest apartment instead of her penthouse, and most importantly, experienced what it was like to be just another black woman trying to make it in corporate America. What she discovered in those 6 months horrified her. Maya walked to her cubicle in the marketing department, past the gleaming awards and motivational posters that proclaimed Sterling Marketing's commitment to diversity, innovation, and excellence. The irony wasn't lost on her. These were values she had personally written into the company's mission statement years ago. She settled into her desk and opened her laptop, glancing around at her colleagues. There was Jennifer Kim, a brilliant Korean-American strategist who consistently had her ideas credited to male colleagues during meetings. There was Carlos Rodriguez, a Latino analyst whose suggestions were often dismissed until a white colleague repeated them verbatim. And there was David Thompson, a talented black graphic designer who had been passed over for promotion 3 times despite having more experience than the white employees who got the positions instead. But the worst part wasn't the overt discrimination, it was how normalized it had become. Maya had watched her employees adapt to microaggressions, casual racism, and systematic exclusion as if it were just part of office life. She had built this company to be different, to be better, and instead she had created an environment that replicated the same biases she had fought against her entire career. Her direct supervisor, Robert Hayes, embodied everything wrong with the company culture. Hayes was a middle manager in his early 50s, who had joined Sterling Marketing 3 years ago with impressive credentials but outdated attitude. He was the type of man who prided himself on being colorblind while consistently favoring white employees and dismissing the contributions of people of color. From her cubicle, Maya could see Hayes in his office, loudly discussing weekend golf plans with two white male colleagues. She had never seen him have similar casual conversations with any of the employees of color in their department. His professional demeanor was reserved exclusively for interactions with Black and Latino staff members, while his white colleagues enjoyed friendly banter and informal mentoring. Maya had documented everything. Every dismissive comment, every interrupted presentation, every instance where Hayes had questioned her qualifications while praising lesser work from white colleagues. She had recorded conversations and compiled a comprehensive file of discriminatory behavior that would have made any employment attorney salivate. But Maya wasn't building a legal case. She was building a reckoning. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning in October. Maya had spent the previous week working on a marketing campaign for their biggest client, a tech startup looking to rebrand their image to appeal to younger, more diverse consumers. She had poured her expertise into the project, drawing on 12 years of CEO-level strategic thinking while being careful to present her ideas at the level expected of a junior associate. The campaign was brilliant. Maya had created a multi-platform strategy that addressed the client's needs while incorporating authentic diversity messaging that avoided the performative tokenism she had seen in so many corporate campaigns. The presentation materials were professional, the market research was thorough, and the creative concepts were innovative. When Maya submitted the campaign to Hayes for review, she felt a familiar mixture of anticipation and dread. In her 6 months undercover, she had learned to recognize the pattern. Hayes would find reasons to criticize work from Black employees while praising inferior work from white staff members. She didn't have to wait long for confirmation. Hayes called her into his office the next morning, his expression stern and disapproving. The campaign materials were spread across his desk, marked up with red ink like a failed exam. Maya sat down and waited for the critique she knew was coming. "Maya," Hayes began, his tone condescending, "we need to talk about your attitude problem." The words hit Maya like a physical blow. Attitude problem was a phrase she had heard weaponized against Black women her entire career. It was code for uppity, a way to dismiss Black women's competence and confidence as insubordination. "I'm sorry, Mr. Hayes," Maya replied, maintaining the deferential tone she had perfected during her undercover months. "Can you help me understand what specifically concerns you?" Hayes leaned back in his chair, clearly enjoying his position of power. "This campaign you submitted, it's too aggressive, too political. Our clients don't want to be lectured about diversity, they want marketing that sells products, not social justice messaging." Maya felt her CEO instincts kick in. The campaign wasn't political, it was strategically sound marketing that responded to documented consumer preferences. The client had specifically requested authentic diversity messaging, and Maya had delivered exactly what they asked for. But she forced herself to respond as Maya Washington, entry-level employee, not Maya Williams, company founder. "I understand your concerns," she said carefully. "The client specifically mentioned wanting to reach younger, more diverse demographics. I based the campaign on market research showing that authenticity and diversity messaging increases brand loyalty among those target groups." Hayes's expression hardened. "Are you arguing with me?" The question was a trap, and Maya recognized it immediately. If she defended her work, she would be labeled as difficult and argumentative. If she backed down, her excellent work would be dismissed and potentially credited to someone else. It was a no-win situation that many Black employees faced daily. But Maya had an advantage that Hayes didn't know about. She wasn't fighting for her job, she was gathering the final piece of evidence she needed to transform her company. "No, sir," Maya replied, maintaining her calm demeanor. "I'm just trying to understand how to better meet your expectations." Hayes stood up and walked around his desk, positioning himself to loom over her chair in a classic intimidation move. "Maya, you've been here 6 months, and I've noticed a pattern. You seem to think you know better than everyone else. You speak up in meetings when you should be listening. You submit work that's too ambitious for your level. You have an attitude that doesn't fit our company culture." Each word was carefully chosen to undermine her confidence and establish his dominance. Maya had heard these same criticisms leveled against talented Black women throughout her career. The subtext was clear. Stay in your place. Don't exceed expectations. Don't show intelligence or ambition that might threaten your white colleagues. But there was more coming, and Maya could sense that Hayes was building towards something bigger. I've been trying to give you chances to improve, Hayes continued, but I don't think you're a good fit for Sterling Marketing. We need team players, not people who think they're above their station. The phrase above their station hit Maya like a slap. It was language steeped in centuries of racial hierarchy, the idea that black people should know their place and stay there. Coming from a manager in her own company, directed at her personally, it was particularly infuriating. Maya took a deep breath and made a decision that would change everything. Mr. Hayes, she said, her voice still calm but carrying a subtle shift in tone, I want to make sure I understand correctly. Are you saying that my work performance is inadequate? Hayes seemed surprised by the directness of the question. Your work is adequate, but it's your attitude that's the problem. You don't respect authority. You don't know your place in the organization. And what place would that be? Maya asked, her voice gaining strength. Hayes's eyes narrowed. He sensed something different in her tone but couldn't identify what had changed. You're an entry-level marketing associate. You should act like one. Take direction, don't question your supervisors, and understand that you're replaceable. Replaceable, Maya repeated, as if testing the word. Interesting choice of words. Maya, I don't like your tone, Hayes said, his voice rising. This is exactly the attitude problem I'm talking about. You're being insubordinate. Maya stood up from her chair, and for the first time in 6 months, she allowed her full presence to show. Her posture straightened, her voice gained authority, and the deference she had been performing vanished. Miss Hayes, she said, I think there's been a misunderstanding about who's replaceable in this conversation. Hayes looked confused, then angry. Excuse me? Are you threatening me? Maya pulled out her phone and made a call. Hayes watched, his confusion growing as she spoke to someone with clear authority. Jennifer, it's time. Yes, now. Conference room A. Bring the employment files for Robert Hayes and have legal standing by. She hung up and looked at Hayes, who was staring at her with growing alarm. Who did you just call? He demanded. You can't use company time for personal calls. I'm writing you up for this. Maya smiled for the first time since entering his office. Mr. Hayes, I'd like to introduce myself properly. My name is Maya Williams, and I'm the founder and CEO of Sterling Marketing Solutions. The color drained from Hayes's face as if someone had opened a valve. His mouth opened and closed wordlessly, his brain struggling to process what she had just said. That's not possible, he stammered. You're Maya Washington, you're an associate. I hired you. You hired Maya Washington, who doesn't exist, Maya replied, her voice carrying the authority he had never heard from her before. Maya Williams, however, has been conducting an undercover investigation into the hostile work environment that apparently flourishes under your management. Hayes sank into his chair, his hands shaking. This is some kind of joke. You can't be, you're black. Maya finished for him. Yes, I am. I'm a black woman who built this company from nothing, and for the past 6 months, I've been watching you systematically discriminate against employees who look like me. The office door opened, and Jennifer Chen walked in, followed by 2 people Hayes recognized as senior executives he had only seen in company-wide meetings. Behind them was a woman in a business suit carrying a briefcase, clearly an attorney. Mr. Hayes, Jennifer said formally, please have a seat. We need to discuss your employment status. Hayes looked around the room in panic, his eyes finally settling back on Maya. You can't do this. I've done nothing wrong. I was just trying to maintain professional standards. Maya opened her laptop and turned the screen toward him. Video files were displayed, each labeled with dates and times. Professional standards like telling a black employee she doesn't know her place, like dismissing excellent work because it's too ambitious for someone of her level, like creating a work environment where people of color are systematically undervalued and marginalized. I never said anything about race, Hayes protested weakly. You didn't have to, Maya replied. That's the insidious nature of modern discrimination. You used coded language and selective enforcement of standards to create a hostile environment. but the impact is the same as if you had used explicit racial slurs. Jennifer stepped forward with a thick folder. Mr. Hayes, we're terminating your employment effective immediately. You'll be escorted from the building and your access to all company systems has been revoked. You'll receive information about your final paycheck and COBRA benefits within the legally required time frame. Hayes stood up unsteadily. You can't fire me for doing my job. I'll sue. I have right. The attorney spoke for the first time. Mr. Hayes, I would strongly advise against pursuing legal action. We have documented evidence of discriminatory practices that could result in significant legal liability on your part. I suggest you accept the termination package being offered and move on. As security guards appeared to escort him out, Hayes turned back to Maya one last time. How long, he asked. How long were you planning this? Maya considered the question. I wasn't planning anything when I started this investigation. I was hoping to find that the complaints we were receiving were isolated incidents or misunderstandings. Instead, I found systematic discrimination that made me ashamed of what my company had become under managers like you. Hayes was escorted out, and Maya was left alone with her executive team. The weight of what had just happened settled over the room. How do you want to handle this company-wide? Jennifer asked. This is going to send shockwaves through the organization. Maya sat down in Hayes's former chair and looked out at the marketing department, where her former cubicle neighbors were craning their necks to see what was happening. We're going to be completely transparent. I'm calling an all-hands meeting for this afternoon. Everyone deserves to know what we found and what we're going to do about it. But the story was far from over. Maya's undercover investigation had uncovered problems that went far beyond Robert Hayes. Over the next few hours, as word spread through the company, other employees began coming forward with their own stories of discrimination and bias. David Thompson, the graphic designer who had been passed over for promotion, requested a meeting with Maya. When she sat down with him in her executive office, no longer hiding her identity, his relief was palpable. I knew something was different about you, he said. You were too confident, too knowledgeable to be just another entry-level employee, but I never imagined. I mean, you're the... Maya leaned forward. David, I want you to know that everything you've experienced here is unacceptable. The fact that you've been passed over for promotion despite your qualifications and seniority is something we're going to address immediately. David's eyes filled with tears. I've been thinking about leaving. My wife keeps telling me I deserve better, but I was afraid I wouldn't find anything else. When you've been told you're not good enough for so long, you start to believe it. This was exactly why Maya had felt compelled to go undercover. The human cost of discrimination wasn't just professional, it was personal, psychological, and generational. When talented people were made to doubt their worth, everyone lost. The all-hands meeting that afternoon was unlike anything in Sterling Marketing's history. Maya stood before her 400 employees and told them exactly what she had done and why. She showed them data on promotion rates, salary disparities, and performance evaluations that revealed clear patterns of bias. She introduced new policies for anonymous reporting, bias training for all managers, and a complete overhaul of the promotion and review process. But the most powerful moment came when she addressed the employees of color directly. To everyone who has felt overlooked, undervalued, or discriminated against in this company, she said, her voice carrying across the packed auditorium, I want you to know that I see you. Your experiences are valid. Your talents are valuable. And we are going to do better. The response was immediate and emotional. Maya watched as people who had been carrying the weight of discrimination for months or years finally felt heard and validated. Over the following weeks, Maya implemented sweeping changes throughout Sterling Marketing. Hayes wasn't the only manager to be terminated. The investigation revealed a network of discriminatory practices that required systematic reform. New diversity and inclusion initiatives were launched. Mentorship programs were established for employees of color, and promotion processes were overhauled to eliminate bias. But perhaps the most significant change was cultural. Maya's willingness to literally walk in her employees' shoes had sent a message that resonated throughout the organization. Leadership meant more than having a title, and real change required understanding the experiences of those who had been marginal. 3 months after Hayes's firing, Maya received an email that encapsulated why her undercover investigation had been necessary. It was from Jennifer Kim, the Korean-American strategist, whose ideas had been consistently credited to others. Maya, the email read, I wanted to thank you for what you did. For the first time since I started working here, I feel like my voice matters. Yesterday, I presented a campaign strategy to our biggest client, and instead of having a colleague repeat my ideas, I was the one leading the meeting. It seems like a small thing, but for me, it changed everything. Thank you for seeing us. Maya printed the email and kept it on her desk as a reminder of why leadership sometimes required uncomfortable action. She had risked her reputation, her comfort, and her position of power to understand the reality of her employees' experiences. In return, she had gained something more valuable, a company that actually lived up to its stated value. The story of Maya's undercover investigation eventually became public when Sterling Marketing was recognized as a leader in corporate diversity and inclusion. Business journals wrote articles about her unconventional approach to addressing workplace discrimination. Other CEOs reached out for advice on how to identify and eliminate bias in their organizations. But for Maya, the real measure of success wasn't the awards or recognition. It was the emails from employees like Jennifer Kim, the confidence she saw in David Thompson as he led his first major project as a newly promoted senior designer, and the knowledge that her company had become a place where talent was truly recognized regardless of race, gender, or background. Robert Hayes, meanwhile, struggled to find new employment. Word of his discriminatory practices had spread through industry networks, and companies were reluctant to hire a manager with a documented history of creating hostile work environment. He eventually found a position with a smaller firm, but the authority and respect he had once wielded were gone forever. When asked by a former colleague about his experience at Sterling Marketing, Hayes would often say, I never saw it coming. But that was exactly the point. Discrimination thrives in environments where those in power never have to see the impact of their actions on those they marginalize. Maya's undercover investigation had forced everyone at Sterling Marketing to confront an uncomfortable truth. Good intentions weren't enough to eliminate bias. Real change required leaders who were willing to listen, learn, and sometimes sacrifice their comfort to understand the experiences of those who had been marginalized. Years later, when Maya spoke at conferences about corporate leadership and social responsibility, she would always return to the same theme: you can't manage what you don't understand, and you can't understand what you refuse to see. Sometimes, the most powerful thing a leader can do is temporarily give up their power to truly comprehend how that power affects others. Maya Williams had built Sterling Marketing Solutions to be successful, but her undercover investigation had taught her something more important. True success wasn't just about profit margins and market share. It was about creating environments where everyone could thrive, where talent was recognized regardless of packaging, and where leadership meant lifting others up rather than keeping them in their place. The woman who had been told she didn't know her place had ultimately shown an entire organization what it meant to create a workplace where everyone belonged. And in doing so, she had proven that sometimes the most radical act a leader can perform is to truly understand the experiences of those they lead. Robert Hayes had been wrong about many things, but perhaps his greatest error was assuming that Maya Williams didn't know her place. She knew exactly where she belonged, at the forefront of creating change, fighting for justice, and proving that when Black women are given the opportunity to lead, they don't just succeed, they transform entire organizations and industry. The conversation in Hayes's office had lasted less than 30 minutes, but its impact would be felt for years to come. It was a reminder that power dynamics can shift in an instant, that assumptions based on race and gender can be dangerously wrong, and that sometimes justice comes from the most unexpected places. Maya Williams had indeed known her place all along. Her place was wherever she chose to be, doing whatever work needed to be done to make the world a little more just, a little more fair, and a little more aware that true leadership comes in all colors, all background, and all forms, even when it's disguised as an entry-level marketing associate who's been underestimated by someone who should have known better. In the end, Robert Hayes had been absolutely right about one thing: Maya Williams definitely had an attitude. She had an attitude of excellence, of integrity, and of unwavering commitment to justice. And that attitude had just transformed her company, her industry, and the lives of hundreds of employees who finally felt seen, valued, and heard. Sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one everyone underestimates. And sometimes the most powerful response to discrimination is not anger or confrontation, but the quiet determination to document everything, build an undeniable case, and then reveal the truth in a way that changes everything forever. Maya Williams had done exactly that, proving that when it comes to fighting injustice, attitude isn't a problem, it's a prerequisite.